The URL for the demonstration site is https://demo.messagelabsarchiving.com. A sample username and password is available from your partner account director. The page is divided into two areas, a vertical menu bar on the left and a content page on the right. For the purposes of this demonstration, select the Policy button. On the left-hand menu you can see items for the draft policy, the active policy, as well as previous policy versions. Any changes that we make will be to the draft policy and will not affect the way in which email is archived until it is published. The right-hand panel contains the table of contents of our policy document with text notes and active elements. Above that there are buttons for adding elements to the policy, viewing properties, uploading the company name and logo, exporting the policy to a PDF file, and publishing the policy. For this demonstration we are going to first look at a retention policy, which is at the bottom of the table of contents. Double-click the policy name to view its contents. We can see here the general properties of our retention policy. The General tab shows the audit trail, the policy text shows the text that will be shown on the PDF, and the Comments tab allows us to add non-printing notes. Clicking on the Retention tab on the left-hand side will allow us to view and modify the amount of time for which email is being retained. In this example we have defined a 3-year period for email retention. The retention period does not begin on the day that the email was archived, but only at the beginning of the next full year. This feature is to reduce the burden on the IT administrator, as he will only need to manage email which has reached the end of its retention period once each year. To alter either of the settings on this screen, we must first click the Modify button. A more complex retention policy may be created, which uses a content engine to define which email needs to be stored in addition to a retention period. In addition to the General and Retention tabs, we can see that this policy also has an option to set the classification rules. These allow the administrator to select email based upon the sender, recipient, the conversation flow, the contents of the email or its attachment, whether it contains specific files or file types, the date on which it was sent, and the presence of info tags. The People tab allows us to look at the senders and recipients of the mail. Selecting Modify and then putting a tick in the box "Messages must involve the following people" allows us to select individuals, Active Directory groups, or domains to include in our email archive. Any real names which we add will be checked against the Active Directory. In this example, we have ensured that any email sent or received by Eric Bass will be added to the email archive. In the Conversation Flow tab, we can choose to archive emails which are inbound to the organization, outbound from the organization, or internal. The Content tab allows us to search the subject, the body, the email attachments, and even the header of the email for a list of words or phrases which we provide. In the Files tab we can limit the archiving to only emails with specific attachments. For this example we set the service to only archive emails containing Word documents. The Dates tab is used to identify emails in particular date ranges. Whilst this may not be particularly useful for archiving, these content rules are also used in the supervision and acceptable use policy elements of the service. Info tags are one of the key selling points of the service and will be explained in more detail towards the end of this section of the demonstration. The next type of policy we want to look at is the acceptable use policy. This highlights undesirable emails using the same content control rules we have already looked at and places them in a queue for a reviewer to read. The detection rules and general options for the acceptable use policy are exactly the same as for the retention policy, but this time we have an additional menu item called Violation. The Violation Risk tab allows the policy manager to set a risk level for emails which breach the policy internally or on an outbound email. These will be used in calculating an organization's overall exposure to risk in the reporting section. The Violation Notification tab allows the policy manager to create a message which will be sent if an email breaks the policy and is confirmed by a reviewer. The final kind of policy which is available is the supervision policy. This is used by companies who want to monitor their employees' correspondence by randomly selecting a percentage of the email for review. The Users menu option allows us to specify who the supervision policy covers, in this case the executive team. The Sampling menu allows the policy manager to define the percentage of email which will be sampled and the maximum number of emails per person per day. If you are doing a presentation to a potential customer, it is definitely recommended that you check their supervision requirements before you start the demonstration. If supervision is not required, do not demonstrate this section as it adds complexity and time which can confuse the prospect. In addition to the retention, acceptable use and supervision elements, a policy manager can also create text modules. These text modules are used to create introductions, additional explanations and define policies which are not actively enforced by the service. Here we have the introduction of the policy as an example of a text module. The company logo appears on the interface and also on any printed versions of the policy. The customer needs to make sure that they keep the images as small as possible. There is also a tab here for setting the company name. Once the policy has been written, the next stage is to present it to the company for approval. Typically this would be done by printing the policy or saving it as a PDF using the export tool. The version with rules is longer and contains the technical detail of the policy elements which have been created. The standard version only contains the text. Here is the cover of the document that has been outputted in PDF format. As you can see, it has been formatted ready for printing. Once the policy has been approved, it may be activated. The justification window can be used to summarize the changes which have been made to the policy since the previous live version was activated. From the moment the policy is activated, it will begin to alter the way in which email is processed. Changing the policy will not affect email which is already in the archive. All previous live versions are stored for auditing purposes and can be reviewed through the main menu. The current active policy can be viewed through the main menu as shown. In addition to the export options, the customer may also print a standard sign-off form to circulate to staff members. This may be required to make sure that all staff have read and agreed with the policy. Info tags are a key element of the service and enable a customer to flag emails which match particular criteria at the time when they were archived. The most common use for this would be in conjunction with email address lists. If a customer needs to retrieve all email between the board and the investment bank after 5 years, then both membership of the board and employees at the bank will probably have changed. If an info tag had been set up which flagged an email between the board and the bank, then all the person tasked with discovery would need to do would be to search for the flag.